Our economy is broken, and I'm going to tell you why. But before I do that, make sure you follow us so that you get all the updates on this series, as well as check out the caption to win some free stuff. Now let's go back to 2020, and we had what I described as a K-shaped economy. Essentially, the top part was what I call the laptop economy, those who could still do their jobs from their laptop, and the physical economy for those people who had to be in person to do their job. Now they had completely different experiences, which led to stimulus. Stay tuned for part 2. All right, so K-shaped economy. We see the upper half of the K working from their laptops. Congress decides to send everybody stimulus. The upper half of the K uses that to upgrade their homes, build home offices, buy the technology for those offices. We saw them just spending money like crazy. The bottom part of the K used it to pay their bills because they weren't able to work. They had to physically be there for their jobs. This also led the Federal Reserve to do some things, which we'll talk about in part 3. So Congress decided to send people money. The Federal Reserve jumped in and said, hey, we're going to lower interest rates. Now, for the upper part of the K, the laptop economy, this was great because they could refinance their homes, move to bigger homes, get 0% interest rates on all kinds of things to buy the stuff on. Now, the lower part of the economy, yes, that helped them with lower debt payments, but it also made housing prices so expensive that they couldn't afford to move. Both the Federal Reserve's policies and stimulus led to runaway inflation, which we'll talk about in part 4. So let's take a little detour and talk about how Congress and the Fed created inflation. Now, Congress approved $5 trillion, which we didn't have in spending, so we had to borrow $5 trillion. Well, normally because investors bought that, we would have a net effect of 0. Well, what the Federal Reserve decided to do was something called quantitative easing, where they said, hey, we'll buy $5 trillion worth of Treasury debt from the Wall Street banks, which essentially doubled the impact of the stimulus. So we had $10 trillion, 50% of our economic output all dumped into the economy, which caused inflation. So Congress and the Fed created inflation. We talked about that in the last video. But let's talk about how that impacted our K-shaped economy. For the upper part, the laptop economy, it's really an inconvenience. Yes, stuff costs more, but they still had excess money sitting around. It doesn't really impact them other than being a little bit annoying. For the bottom half, it's absolutely decimating because they have been living paycheck to paycheck and now they have higher prices. So the Federal Reserve solution, which we're going to talk about next, really is hurting the bottom half of the K much more. The Federal Reserve really only has one tool to fight inflation, and that's to raise interest rates, and they've done that quite aggressively. Now, that's starting to hurt the upper part of the K, the laptop economy. Not only is it becoming really hard for them to move because mortgage rates have gone up so much, but we're starting to see layoffs announced in the tech sector. For the bottom half of the K, it's the same old story. Higher interest rates are hurting them. They're unable to move anyways. Real estate is still high. And we're starting to see layoffs announced in the physical economy as well, which is leading us towards recession, which we'll talk about next. Congress and the Fed has created this recession. We've laid it out in the last 6 parts. For you have to be prepared. There's lots of things you can do, but primarily you need to figure out ways that you can cut spending as much as possible. If you can find other income sources, do it. Please be careful out there. We've posted a lot of videos here on our page. You can go back through them. Make sure you're following us because we're going to be here for you as we go through this recession and help you come out the other side of it because we do know things will get better.